hearing one of them talk to his mom and referring to me as the brown boy. Because I was like, wait, I'm brown? Like, I thought I was just like, I thought we were all like kids. I thought like, that's just how it was.
What's up, Junior High Ministry? Steve here. I'm so excited to be with you guys today. I hope you're having a great week. Today we have a different type of message for you. Recently, I've had a really informative and relevant conversation with two of my dear friends, Gabby and Zac, in regards to their background, the climate of our culture today, and just their upbringing and what friendships mean to them. And so I want to show you a sneak peek into our conversation and take a look at what they had to say.
Well, what's up, Junior High? So excited to be back with you. I'm Steve. I'm here with Jess, and we're here with some of our friends. Gabby is one of my best friends in the entire world, and we have Zac here with us as well, who's one of my really good friends as well. And so we're excited to be coming to you live, not live. We're excited to just be with you and hang out with you guys today as we get a conversation, a very much needed conversation started. And so, Gabby, I want to start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family? I have the privilege of knowing every single person in your family. But what was it like growing up for you? And what's your family dynamic?
Sure. So I grew up in New York, which if you guys know anything about Steve, you know that's where he's from. I've known him since I had to be like 13 or something, like middle schoolish, and he was in high school. And growing up in New York, I grew up in a pretty big family. So sibling-wise, I have one older sister and two brothers, one who's older, one who's younger. But I grew up with both my parents. Both of them had a lot of siblings as well. My mom had like 7 brothers and 1 sister, and my dad had 3 sisters. So almost all of them had kids and got married. So I had a lot of cousins, lots of aunts, lots of uncles, like just very family oriented in the way that I grew up. A lot of people around pretty much all the time. So
thanks for that, Gabby. And now Zac, kind of same thing as Gabby.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty similar to Gabby's, like a big-ish family, I guess. It feels like it's big. So it's my 2 parents who raised me like going to church, like in a Christian house, and they really like showed me what it means to love Jesus and everything like that. And then I have older sister, younger sister, and then younger brother, foster brother. And it's just us. Yeah, like we grew up really just like around here, like same at Crossroads, like our whole lives and stuff like that. So it was really good. It wasn't always as big of a family as it is now, but especially with the baby now, I think he's almost 2 years old. Like it feels like the family's like getting a lot bigger, and I feel bad. I don't have like a whole bunch of uncles like you guys. Like I'm missing out, but it's fine.
So what was your school dynamic like? And then how did you make your friends? And like, who are they? Playing sports? Like, how did you make your friends growing up? We'll go with Zac first.
I think for me, it was like very interesting because I was homeschooled up until high school, which was like an interesting experience. And then high school, I wanted to play basketball, so I went to a private school. And as far as friends go, it's been really cool because like my 4 closest friends, like my best friends, we've grown up together. Like I met them when I was like 10 or 11, and we're still like best friends to this day. Like they were just at my house last night until like 3 a.m. just hanging, and it was cool. But it's really cool. Like I really can appreciate like how, even though I'm not someone who necessarily like has a lot of friends, like I still have my close friends, and we've just like pretty much grown up together. So I think that's been like really, really special, and like just being able to get close while we were in middle school. And now that we're adults and like definitely in different stages of life, to still have those same friends and be close has been like super huge for me.
Yeah, I have a very similar story. So I wasn't homeschooled, but I went to a private school that might as well have been my house. It was like the same 10 kids with like give or take trickling, like one person leaving, one new person coming here and there throughout the years. So throughout my entire like middle school, high school, elementary school, I had like the same friends. I eventually switched to a bigger private school, which was still really small. My grade was only like 60 kids. So I went from a school where the grade was like 12 kids to a school where the grades were like 60 kids. So it felt a lot bigger to me, but I know to a lot of public school kids, that's like so tiny they can't even imagine it. So I had a lot of friendships that I got really close to from growing up, elementary school, high school. And when I switched schools to high school, I made a ton of new friends from a lot of different backgrounds. Something that a lot of you guys might not know is the way that New York works is there's New York City, which is like Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, Staten Island, but we don't consider that. And so that's considered New York City. And I went to school in Long Island growing up, and that's like the suburbs. So that's very much like not at all city. It's much more chill, very like local houses and all that. And so when I switched schools to the city, it was completely different environment. The kids were incredibly different. Like it was a totally culture shift. Like I was so out of whack there, but I loved it. And I met a lot of kids who had completely different backgrounds than what I was used to. A lot of kids who grew up very different than I did, taking subways from the time they were like 8 years old by themselves until then. I was like, I can't even walk down the street by myself. So I'm going to need you guys to teach me some things. So yeah, for me, like school was really interesting. Just like going from those two different cultures taught me a lot, and I was able to learn a lot about people and learn a lot from people. Most of the friends that I have now are the people that I met when I was like 4 or 5 starting at my new school. So it's pretty cool that like in the same way as Zach, I got to keep a lot of my younger childhood friendships. But also another way that I made a lot of friends and still have a lot of those same friends like Steve was from church, from youth group. So for us, like going to the same church from the time we were little, that like you really take for granted the kinds of bonds that you make with people when you're that age, especially when it comes to the same community. So like having a community is so important. And when you start really young, and you kind of like grow together and you learn a lot of the same things and have the same foundation for a lot of your beliefs, it changes the type of friendship you have than if you are to meet someone much later on who comes from a different background and a different culture. So for a lot of you guys, you're 6th, 7th, 8th graders, like you're at that sweet spot age where you're just starting to develop your own foundations and starting to figure out what you believe and what you think and how you're growing, and you have a community around you. So this is just kind of like a plug for you guys, like take advantage of the situation you have. For Zach and I, we made a lot of our friends when we were younger, and we still have those same friends. So look around, try to develop those relationships with each other, because community, it changes when you get older. It does. And you don't get the same kind of access as you do at the age that you are. Mm-hmm. So definitely use it while you can.
That's a word
right there.
That's a word. Preach it. Okay, we're going to our next question. And my next question that I have for you is, what was your childhood like? What was it like growing up?
So like I said before, I grew up in Long Island, which is very suburban. So my childhood was very much like typical suburban childhood. I grew up in a house with my siblings and my parents, my next door neighbors. Pretty much all of the neighbors around me growing up had kids around my age. So on either side of my house, I had neighbors who, in one side, the daughter was a year older than me. The other side, the daughter was a year younger than me. So I grew up always having people around my age to play with and kind of get along with. And then obviously I had church that I grew up in as well. So I grew up always surrounded by kids my age. My parents kept me really active. I was in youth camps, like every summer, youth retreats, anytime they offered them. I did sleepaway camps. I did sports. I did basketball. I did soccer, tennis, dance. I did so much. Like my parents really spoiled me when it came to having like different activities and getting to be very like cultured in a lot of things that I got to do, which I know is like not everyone's experience. So now I'm really happy and blessed to be able to say that like I got to experience something that a lot of people don't in their childhoods. But I really enjoyed my childhood. I felt safe and I felt like I got to do fun things and try new things. And it really did shape me into the person that I am now, just being able to have the experiences that I did as a kid.
Yeah, dang. For me, like super similar to that too. Like for sure, sports were a big one. Church was huge. Like just having friends and like people in my life. And I think for me though, like just my family was super huge. Like just like staying close to them and just having like them in my life, like my parents, my sister, and just like everyone around me, I think was like really, really huge. And looking back, like, I think that shaped so much of like who I am now. Like, I'm really glad that I had that, and that could kind of like what I said, like kind of be the foundation for the person that I'm like still growing up to be. So I'm like super grateful for that. Like basketball was huge. Like that was definitely like what I wanted to do. Like I thought for sure I was going to be in the NBA, and I still might be. So I'm still holding my breath. We'll see. But yeah, no, just stuff like that. Like church was huge. Church, family, and like basketball were like the biggest things. Like my friends would like fall into those categories too. But yeah, definitely a really good childhood. Really good growing up too. So very similar to yours. It's crazy.
Long lost brother and sister. That's what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm one of your uncles.
You look familiar.
I love it. So next question, I'm going to blend two together, but basically I just want people to kind of know you a little bit more. And so let's talk ethnicity. What's your ethnicity? And then as a result of that, what have been your experiences and have you been treated differently because of your ethnicity, because of your color? And how did that in the moment make you feel? Zach, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go. If I remember like all 12 of those, and then I'll answer them. I think so. My dad is from Africa. He was born and raised there, grew up there. My mom is from America, East Coast, like also like born and raised there. So I guess that would make me African and American, or otherwise known as a light skin. But as far as being treated differently, it's definitely times that I can think of just like having different experiences than I feel like most kids would. And like the earliest I could think back is when I must have been like 8 or 9 years old, maybe even younger than that. And I remember having a sleepover with one of my friends, and it was just like a birthday party for him. So it was a lot of his friends too, and I didn't really know them. Just like it was a bunch of like white kids, pretty much. And I remember hearing one of them talk to his mom and referring to me as the brown boy. And I remember, like, I don't remember a lot of the details or anything, but I do remember the feeling that gave me. And like, I just remember wanting to go home so bad. Like, I didn't even know like what that was. I was like, wait, I'm brown. Like, I thought I was just like, I thought we were all like kids. I thought like, that's just how it was. But I feel like at that age, I couldn't really process it well. Like what it means to be treated differently, what it means to like view myself differently now. And then just like moving on from there, like I think it's still definitely interactions like that. Like even fast forward to now, like at school, like I'll have teachers who will just look at me, view me differently. Like obviously like not treat me like in a rude way, but they'll look at me differently based off of how I look, how I dress, like my hair, like my tattoos. Like I could tell things like that. And like I almost like always feel just a pressure to try and like prove to them something, like, hey, like I'm not what you think of me, like just have a conversation with me, like give me a chance. And I think that's hard. But as I was like just thinking about like these questions, I think it's almost something that I've kind of learned to not really think about. And that's just like the reality of like what like I have to do or what I feel like I have to do and stuff like that. So I think just interactions like that, like growing up, like when I was super young to even now, just like having that almost pressure, I think that kind of like definitely weighs on you. And it makes me really question, like, what does it mean to be different? Like, does this mean that I'm like less? Does this mean I have less value than people? And a lot of the times the thing that sticks with me most is just the feeling that it leaves me with. And I think that's been the hardest part.
Yeah, as you're sharing that, I'm not going to lie, I wiped my eyes because I was tearing up just because I, and Gabby can attest to this, like, I didn't grow up like ever even seeing people like that. It was like, dude, that's my cousin, that's my aunt, that's my best friend. Like, it didn't matter. So it is a sad reality that happens, you know what I mean? And that treatment happens today, which we're witnessing. And what I love is that in Christ, we're all one. Yeah. And that's what brings us all together. And so I love that we could have these friendships, and it's because of the local church, how we met and were able to Christ brings us all together. And so I love that. And man, thanks for sharing your heart.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
Wow.
for sure.
So both my parents were born in Haiti. My mom is half Cuban, and my dad, they both have really interesting like ancestry stories. So my mom's half Cuban, and then her mom is Cuban and her dad is like native Haitian. And then my dad's side of the family, his father was mostly Haitian, but his father's mom was Italian. And his mother, we just found out last year that her mom was Polish.
Wow.
And yeah, like there's a whole lot of like things going on in their ethnicity.
I
so
love that.
so there's just a lot there. But essentially, I grew up believing I was Haitian. I still am Haitian, but I grew up like Haitian was the culture. That was the ethnicity that I was. And it wasn't until I got older that things started to get confusing. So I'll just say I'm Haitian for the most part. At least until I was 8 years old, I had been treated in no way that I would be able to tell that I was different. But I specifically remember in third grade. So yeah, I was around 8 years old. Growing up for me, I had a lot of white teachers and a lot of white classmates. And I remember my third grade teacher decided to like play a game kind of thing where she had all the girls come and put a water bottle in their hair. And then they would tie their hair up with a like scrunchie. And it kind of looked like Lucy Liu. Like if you guys have ever seen, or not Lucy Liu, Lucy Liu who? Yeah, Lucy Liu. So she has like this weird like hair thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So growing up for me as a Black girl, I only was allowed to do my hair how my mom did my hair because our hair takes a lot of maintenance. And as a kid, you don't really know how to take care of your hair until you're older. Like you have to learn that. And so my mom would do my hair, and once she did it, I couldn't touch it. I wasn't allowed to do anything to it. So she would usually do my hair in braids because that's a really healthy like hairstyle for our natural hair. All the other girls were like putting the water bottles in their hair, and it was so fun and so cute. And I remember wanting to do it so bad, but I wasn't allowed because I knew my mom would get mad at me if I took out my braids. But I remember feeling like really insignificant in that moment because one, I wasn't able to do what everyone else was doing, but two, nobody had even thought about me and my experience and whether or not that was something I could do. And so it just made me feel really not seen and not heard. And that kind of became the theme for how I felt when it came to me being Black growing up. So I had a diverse group of friends the majority of my life. From the time I was little, it was mostly white, but as I got older, it became very diverse. Spanish, Indian, like all different people from all around the world, which is really cool. But something that always carried with me until I was a lot older and I was able to reconcile my race with Christ was me feeling like I was insignificant or I was always less than because of my race. And it was always like this elephant in the room that no one would ever talk about. But I was the Black girl and I couldn't do all the things that everyone else could do because I was the Black girl. And it just kind of took like a lot of time for me to understand like what that meant for me and how I could lay that at the cross and not feel like that was a burden for me anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like people's like lack of self-awareness like totally was like messed up, you know, just because they're self-aware of like the situation, like what's going on. Like, it's crazy how you can just literally, by not being self-aware, you can wreck someone.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, I was 8 years old when that happened to me, and I still remember it to this day because it changed so much about me.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, for sure. And just, like, perception, you know what I mean? Like Zach sharing with his professors and just being in school and seeing tattoos, and now it's like, I have to show them, I have to prove them. Meanwhile, if they just perceived him to be, dude, let's just see who he is, you know, instead of putting a judgment. And so, man,
on appearances.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I like this question. What have you come to understand about Jesus' view of race, ethnicity, equality? And so just, you guys are both followers of Jesus for a long time now. And Zach's in Bible college. Gabby, you went to a Christian school your entire life. And you work in a church. How awesome is that? We didn't mention that one, but you work in a church, which is awesome. And so what has been, what is your understanding of that? Like, what's Jesus' view on race, ethnicity, equality? Like, what do you guys think?
Start with
You want to go first?
Oh shoot!
We'll start
I'm
with
so bad at this. Zach.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I've been like really, like when I feel like the past 2 weeks when everything was like getting really crazy with this topic, I like really wanted to like look and see what the Bible said, and I was like ready. I was like, okay, like I'm gonna have to study like really hard to look like really difficult, or look really hard for these difficult answers. And it was like very obvious to see how God feels about justice, and to see how Jesus treats people who were quote unquote less than or culturally different than him. And I think the first thing I think of is the woman at the well story, where Jesus was in Samaria, which was, he was Jewish. Samaria, Jews believed that Samaritans were pretty much less than human at that time. And he waited for a woman, which was already someone who was like, quote unquote, lower than them at that time, would be considered that, and a different race than him. And the way that he showed compassion to her, the way that he cared about her it's like, you can't miss it. Like, it's right there. And I think it's really cool too, because I heard it said this way, that the way that the Bible would define racism is fighting against your own team. And I think that that's so huge, because you can look at the first few pages of the Bible. It says that God created man in his image, all men, all women, everyone in his image. And then you go to the very end of the Bible in Revelation, and it says that one day all men, all race, ethnicity, everyone is going to be bowing down in heaven, worshiping God. And I see like such a connection there. It doesn't say like God created white people in his image, God created Americans in his image. No, it says he created all men, all women in his image. And I think that that's so huge. And I think if we were to almost like adopt like his mindset, then we would get rid of the predetermining people based off of how they look, how they dress, having opinions before we even get to know people. And I think that if we were to really look, like, we don't have to look hard, like, to see how God is really, really sad by racism. Like, he's really sad by injustice. Like, God cares about people who don't look like us. God cares about people who don't get treated the same. Like, I think racism is one of the worst crimes or sins that we face as humans. And just to like hearing Gabby's like stories and mine, like these things like stick with you. And it's not like it's just like you brush it off like, oh yeah, like they call me brown boy, like I get treated differently, like it's whatever. Like I know that like we're still called to love everyone, but these things really do cut deep. But I'm so happy that we have the Bible that talks about it, that we serve a God who isn't partial to one person, but he loves us all, and he created us in his own image for his own glory. And I think that that's so beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think I love how it started off in Genesis and then in Revelation, and I love that because it really closes out everything. You know what I mean? And it just, man, so good. I just got a timer. We have 10 minutes. Pressure.
No, I think I got it. I mean, honestly, Zach said everything that I was going to say. Like, literally, I was thinking John 4, the woman at the well, everything. But no, but it's because it's so true. Like, when we think about Genesis, like you were just saying, when we think about Genesis, God created man in his image, right? And he said it was good. God knew how diverse man was going to be, you know? He knew that we would have all different races, all different ethnicities, like so many different languages, countries, all of that. Like, he knew what the end result was going to be, and he said it was good. Yeah. So it's only that we have taken on this idea that, okay, because this person looks this way, or because this person has this color skin, that they're a different type of person, or they're less than or above or whatever. And that's something that we as humans did in our sin nature. And that's not something that God created. And we as people need to recognize that. Like, it would be just as silly as if one day we all decided, okay, everybody who has eyebrows that touch each other, they're less than human because they look more like animals, or something stupid like that. Like, if we were to all of a sudden decide that and say, okay, like, that's going to be it. God's up in heaven like, what? What? How is that? What? So it's kind of like that idea of us understanding God created us the way that we are, and that's beautiful, and that should be celebrated. We shouldn't be looking at that as something that is bad or something that is less than in any way. And specifically with the woman at the well, when you think about that story, she was exactly what the Jewish people didn't like. Like, not only was she a Samaritan, she was also an adulteress. She had been with many men, and she was with a man that she wasn't even married to at the time when Jesus called her out on it.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what the Jewish people thought of the Samaritans. They were like, oh, they're this and they're bad and they're sinful and they don't take the Lord holy, like all these different things. But yet Jesus still spoke to her, still showed her love, still gave her the gospel and showed her like who he was. He didn't have to do that, And so many times people, especially nowadays, will say, well, like, these people, they're being crazy, they're being wild, they're, a little bit this, a little bit that. And yes, like, sure, those are bad things. Just like the woman at the well was doing bad things and Jesus called her out on it. But at the end of the day, he still showed her love and he still extended grace to her, even with all that she had going on, because she was still human. Jesus still died for her. And that's how we need to view everyone of all races, all ethnicities. They're still human. Doesn't matter what their sins are, doesn't matter what their past is, it doesn't matter what struggle they grew up with. They're still human beings created in God's image.
Yeah.
That's good. What I love too is that he went out of his way and he had a conversation with her. Mm-hmm. And I think with everything going on right now, hence why we're meeting, is because conversations need to happen.
Yes.
That is how change is going to happen. That's how transformation happens. And so I think ultimately conversations need to come out of this. And so those of you that are watching, have conversations with people that are different than you. I'm Greek, I'm Irish, I'm German, you know what I mean? I'm as white as you can get. But these conversations help me to understand my friends, help me to understand people that look different than me, people that are different than me. And it helps you appreciate it that much more.
Well, guys, I hope you learned something new. I know I for sure did. In Psalm 139, it says, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And I just want to let you know that you watching this, wherever you are, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you're created on purpose with a purpose. And God created you and I in his image. And so that's one of my biggest takeaways that I want you to know. But don't forget, right after this, we have life groups coming up, and so the link is going to be right over in the chat. Make sure you join one of our Zoom groups. We would love to see you. Also, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel. If you're a middle schooler wanting to be encouraged, wanting to have fun and see people goof around, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because this channel is for you. We love you guys, and I cannot wait to see you soon. But until then, I'll see you next week. God bless, guys.